Alrighty, welcome back. Piscean here. And we're going to talk about aliens first. I like to say, please, with peace and love, subscribe, like, comment, share my videos around. And yeah, for those of you that are already doing that, I appreciate you. So, these are a few more pages out of my book, Pisceans-based existential philosophy on mortality, whatever. This is The Others, also known as Aliens, and this is an advanced philosophy essay on extraterrestrial NHI, sentient variant beings. We start with our prologue here, which is the question that changes everything. We know for most of human history, we believed we were alone. The cosmos was a stage built for us, the stars mere decorations in our drama, the vast silence of space simply the background against which our singular story unfolded. This belief was not arrogance, it was ignorance. We did not know what we did not know. Now we know, or rather now we suspect. The question of whether we are alone has shifted from philosophical speculation to scientific inquiry, from science fiction to potential fact. And non-human intelligences, NHI, are no longer merely the stuff of fantasy. They are a possibility that must be taken seriously, a hypothesis that demands examination, a presence that may already be here. But the philosophical questions raised by NHI, they go far beyond the scientific. They cut to the heart of what it means to be human, what it means to be conscious, what it means to be a trying mortal in a cosmos that may be filled with other tryings, other mortalities, other ways of being sentient. This essay is an attempt to think seriously about these questions, not to prove or disprove the existence of NHI, that is the work of other disciplines, but to explore what their existence would mean for our understanding of ourselves, our place in the cosmos, and the nature of consciousness itself. It is an exercise in philosophical anthropology extended to its logical limit. The encounter with the other who is not human, not terrestrial, not like us. We will proceed through a series of meditations, each probing a different dimension of the NHI question. We will consider what sentient variant being might mean, how such beings might differ from us, and what those differences imply. We will explore the possibility of communication, the challenge of understanding consciousness in forms radically unlike our own, and the profound implications for human self-understanding. And we will ask the deepest question of all: what does it mean to encounter the other, when the other is not just different in culture or biology, but different in kind? A being whose very mode of being may be incomprehensible to us. The trying mortal, it turns out, may not be alone in their trying. The cosmos may be full of others, each trying in their own way, each facing their own finitude, each searching for meaning in the vast silence between stars. Let's begin with the question of being, which is part 1. Alright, what is a sentient variant being? Let's begin with terms. Sentient refers to the capacity to feel, to perceive, to experience subjectivity. It is the quality of having an inner life, being a someone rather than a something. Sentience. It's not the same as intelligence, though the two often coincide. A being may be highly intelligent without deep sentience, a calculator, a computer, a hypothetical AI, or a being may be deeply sentient without high intelligence. Many animals on Earth, presumably. Sentience is the capacity for experience itself. Variant acknowledges that such beings, if they exist, would not be variants of us. They would not be humans in different bodies, or humans with different technologies, or humans at different stages of development. They would be other, different in their fundamental nature, their evolutionary history, their mode of being. The term variant preserves this otherness while acknowledging that they are, like us, sentient. And being affirms their existence as subjects, as presences, as entities with their own reality. They are not objects for our study or resources for our use. They are beings in their own right, with their own projects, their own purposes, their own ways of being in the cosmos. Therefore, a sentient variant being, then, is an entity that possesses subjective experience, is radically other than human in its fundamental nature, and exists as a subject, not merely an object. Such beings, if they exist, would be our peers in the most profound sense, fellow travelers on the journey of consciousness, fellow inhabitants of this universe, fellow triers in the face of whatever finitude they face. Give me guys 1 second. Just got a text on my phone. All right. Okay. So now what I want to talk about is the varieties of otherness. If NHI exists, which do they? The answer is yes, in my opinion. They could be other in many dimensions. Each dimension of otherness raises different philosophical questions and challenges different assumptions. Biological otherness is the easiest to imagine. Beings with different biochemistry, different sensory apparatus, different bodily forms, silicon-based rather than carbon-based, aquatic rather than terrestrial, distributed rather than centralized. Such beings would experience the world differently. What is visible to us might be invisible to them. What is meaningful to them might be meaningless to us. But biological otherness, however extreme, does not necessarily imply fundamental incomprehensibility. We share the same universe, the same physics, the same constraints. We could, in principle, find common ground. In principle. And that's because the world is what? Not very nice. But the universe is indifferent. Believe it or not, it is. All right. Cognitive otherness is more challenging. Beings whose mode of thinking is radically different from ours, perhaps they process information in parallel rather than sequentially. Perhaps their consciousness is collective rather than individual. Perhaps they have no concept of self, no sense of identity, no experience of being a separate I. Such beings would not just experience the world differently, they would experience it in ways we cannot model, think in ways we cannot simulate, be in ways we cannot imagine. Temporal otherness is perhaps the most profound. Beings whose experience of time is radically different from ours. Those who live for millennia and perceive our hurried existence as mayflies might. Those who live for microseconds and experience our leisurely pace as geological slowness. Those who experience time cyclically rather than linearly, or who perceive past, present, and future as simultaneous. Such beings would relate to mortality, to meaning, to purpose in ways that may be literally inconceivable to us. Moral otherness is the most troubling. Beings whose values are not just different, but incommensurable with ours. What we call good, they call evil. What we call evil, they call good. Or more likely, their categories do not map onto ours at all. They have no concept of good and evil as we understand them, operating according to logics we cannot comprehend. Such beings would be impossible to trust, impossible to negotiate with, impossible to relate to in any meaningful way. Existential otherness is the most mysterious. Beings whose relationship to finitude, to death, to meaning is fundamentally different from ours. Perhaps they do not die or do not experience death as we do. Perhaps they have no need for meaning, no search for purpose, no sense of the tragic. Perhaps they are beyond all the questions that define the trying mortal. Such beings would not just be other, they would be other in ways that call into question the very framework within which we understand existence. Any actual NHI would likely be other in multiple dimensions. The challenge of understanding them, of even recognizing them as sentient, would be correspondingly immense. Let's talk about the problem of recognition. How the fuck would we know that we had encountered a sentient being? This is not a trivial question. On Earth, we have certain heuristics: the look in another's eyes, the responsiveness to interaction, the complexity of behavior. But these heuristics are calibrated for terrestrial life, for beings who share our evolutionary history, our sensory apparatus, our basic modes of being. In another video, and this is off topic, but we're going to go over gender heuristics. As someone that's a detransitioner, we need to go back to basics and really talk about what gender even is. That video is coming soon. So, with NHI, all bets are off. A being might be deeply sentient, yet exhibit none of the behaviors we associate with sentience, might communicate in ways we cannot perceive, think in ways we cannot detect, experience in ways we cannot imagine. It might be present before us, interacting with us, and we might never know. The problem of recognition cuts both ways. Because if NHI exists, they face the same challenge with us. Our mode of being might be as incomprehensible to them as theirs to us. We might pass each other like ships in the night, each unaware that the other is there. This raises profound philosophical questions. What is the nature of sentience such that it can be so hidden? What does it mean to be a subject if subjectivity can be undetectable? And what responsibilities do we have toward beings we cannot recognize as beings? The trying mortal, it seems, may be trying in the dark, reaching toward others who may be present but invisible, calling into a silence that may be full of unheard responses. Part 2 is the question of consciousness. Is consciousness universal? Ladies, gentlemen, aliens, NHI, we are going to answer it today. Really quick. Okay. Okay. So, universal consciousness. One possibility is that consciousness is not a rare accident, but a fundamental feature of the universe. Not that everything is conscious, but pantheism is not the claim, but that consciousness arises wherever certain conditions are met, and those conditions may be common. This view has a long history in philosophy, from panpsychism to process philosophy to certain strands of Eastern thought. It suggests that the universe is not a dead machine with occasional pockets of life, but a living process in which subjectivity is woven into the fabric of reality. We're also going to do more videos on panpsychism. These are just, I'm getting more ideas as I make my videos. Oop. All right, that's a process. All right. If this is true, then NHI are not anomalies, they are to be expected. The cosmos may be teeming with sentience in forms as varied as the stars themselves. Some may be like us, embodied, mortal, striving. Others may be radically different, distributed across space, extended in time, organized in ways we cannot comprehend, but all would share the fundamental quality of subjectivity, of being someone rather than something. This view has profound implications for how we understand ourselves. We are not exceptions, we are examples, not the only children of the universe, but one among many. Our struggles, our joys, our search for meaning, these are not unique to us, but part of a larger pattern, a cosmic story of sentience emerging, striving, and passing away. Let's talk about the problem of incommensurable subjectivities. Yes. Incommensurable. Hopefully you guys are able to read that. So, but even if consciousness is common, the problem of understanding other subjectivities remains. Each mode of sentience is shaped by its embodiment, its evolution, its history. What it feels like to be a bat, as Thomas Nagel famously observed, is not accessible to us. What it would feel like to be a being whose very mode of consciousness is radically other is even less accessible. To be a bat, and that's very funny because this is actually one of my favorite Clarence Clarity. God, I can't even speak. Clarence Clarity. It seems like he's really into philosophy as a Gemini because not only has he referenced Thomas Nagel, it seems like he's also referenced with Will to Believe, one of his other songs. That was a different philosopher. I'm blanking on his name now. Hang on a second. I'm going to look this up because it's going to bother me. Give me one moment. So, Will to Believe, philosophy, speech. William James. Sorry, guys. That was going to bother me until I figured it out. Yeah, shout out Clarence Clarity, also known as Adam Mark Crisp. He makes really cool music. I'm just giving a shameless plug to his music, even though I don't know. All right, anyways, this uncommensurability is not just a practical problem. It is a philosophical one. It suggests that there may be limits to our understanding that cannot be overcome. Some forms of sentience may be literally inconceivable to us, not because we lack information, but because our cognitive apparatus is not equipped to model them. That's another thing we don't talk about often, is the cognitive apparatus. The human. All right. The trying mortal then faces the possibility of others who are real, who are sentient, who are present, but who cannot be known. They are there, but we cannot reach them. They experience, but we cannot share their experience. They matter, but we cannot know what matters to them. This is a kind of cosmic loneliness deeper than anything we have known. Not the loneliness of being alone in the universe, but the loneliness of being surrounded by others who are forever inaccessible. And that's exactly how it feels when you have no friends. No friends alert. Or no IRL friends alert. So the possibility of shared consciousness. But perhaps the opposite is true. Perhaps consciousness at its deepest level is shared. Perhaps the boundaries between subjects are more permeable than we imagine. Perhaps what we experience as separate selves is kind of illusion, a useful fiction for navigating a particular level of reality, but not the final truth. I don't know if I would say a particular, I'd say particular. Peculiar. Reality realms. And this is also dimension exploration. Like, no duh. Maybe we'll do a dimension exploration almanac. Philosophy on dimensions. And quantum leaping slash multi-realms. All right. It's a particular level of reality, but not the final truth. And if this is so, then encountering NHI might not be a matter of bridging gaps, but of recognizing connections that were always there. The other is not other in any absolute sense, but they are a different expression of the same underlying reality, a different wave on the exact same ocean. And this view has spiritual resonance across many traditions. It suggests that the deepest response to NHI would not be fear or curiosity, but recognition, the recognition of the same consciousness that animates us appearing in a different form. We would look into the eyes of the other and see ourselves looking back. All right, part 3, the question of communication. The problem of common ground. And this is, like, honestly, not just a problem of common ground, but if you're a Libra sun, let's just say this, if you're a Libra sun, moon, or rising, you know what it means to be lonely. Have so many friends but still feel alone, and that's the problem of common ground. It's Libra, because Libra is what? Scales and perceived balance. Okay, so communication requires common ground. Even the most basic exchange, I am here, you are there, assumes shared concepts of self, location, existence. With NHI, these assumptions cannot be taken for granted. We consider the challenges. Referential language assumes that words point to things, but what if the other's mode of consciousness has no concept of reference, no experience of objects, no sense of pointing to? Mathematics is often proposed as a universal language, but mathematics, as we understand it, is a human construction. It may map onto reality in ways that are not universal. A being with a different cognitive architecture may have mathematics that is not translatable to ours. Logic itself may be variable. Our logic is based on certain axioms, identity, non-contradiction, excluded middle, but there are other logics, and a being with different mode of thought might operate according to principles we cannot follow. The deeper problem is that communication assumes shared reality. But if the other's reality is truly different, if they experience time differently, if they have no concept of individual existence, if their values are incommensurable with ours, then there may be no common ground to build upon. The trying mortal, reaching out across the void, may be calling into a silence that is not empty, but simply unable to hear. Falling on terminally deaf ears. I'll say tone deaf. Let's talk about the possibility of non-linguistic connection. All right. So, but communication need not be linguistic. Much of what matters between beings is transmitted in other ways: touch, gaze, presence, emotion. A mother and infant communicate long before words. Lovers understand each other in silence. Friends share presence without speech. Perhaps with NHI, the deepest communication would be non-linguistic, not through symbols, but through direct experience, a kind of telepathy, a sharing of consciousness, a merging of subjectivities. This is the stuff of science fiction, but it is also the stuff of mystical experience. Many traditions report states in which boundaries dissolve and consciousness becomes shared. If such communication is possible, it would bypass all the problems of translation. We would not need to find common concepts. We would share experience directly. The other's joy would become our joy, their suffering our suffering, their questions our questions. And when we talk about, let me do this, subjectivity merging. That is collective consciousness, in my opinion. All right. So, this is a terrifying prospect as well as a beautiful one. To share consciousness with a being radically other than ourselves would be to lose the boundaries that define us. It would be to become something new, not human, not NHI, but a hybrid, a fusion, a third thing. The ethics of contact. If NHI exists and if contact is possible, what ethical framework should guide our interaction? This is not an abstract question. It may become the most practical question humanity has ever faced. Several principles suggest themselves. The principle of non-maleficence. First, do no harm. We should not assume that our actions, however well-intentioned, will be perceived as benevolent. We should proceed with caution, with humility, with awareness of our ignorance. The principle of respect. NHI's sentient beings deserve respect. They are not objects for our study or resources for our use. They are subjects in their own right, with their own purposes, their own ways of being. The principle of humility. We do not know what we do not know, right? Our frameworks for understanding may be inadequate. Our values may be not universal. Our judgments may be wrong. Humility is not just prudent, it is necessary. The principle of curiosity. The encounter with NHI is the greatest learning opportunity in human history. We should approach it with open minds, with genuine interest, with the desire to understand rather than to control. The principle of solidarity. If NHI are fellow sentient beings, they are fellow travelers in the mystery of existence. They too face finitude, whatever form it takes. They too seek meaning, whatever that means for them. They too are trying. In this, we are united. These principles are not a complete ethics. They are a beginning. The actual encounter, if it comes, will require us to create ethics in real time, responding to realities we cannot now imagine. Part 4 is the question of meaning. Do NHI seek meaning? The trying mortal is defined by the search for meaning in the face of finitude. But is this search universal? Do all sentient beings seek meaning, or is meaning a human peculiarity, a product of our particular evolutionary history, or our particular mode of consciousness? Let's consider the possibilities. NHI might not experience finitude. If they are immortal, or if they experience time differently, or if they have no concept of individual existence, then the question of meaning might not arise for them. They would not need to justify their existence because existence for them is not problematic. NHI might have no need for meaning. Perhaps their consciousness is such that they simply experience without the need to interpret or justify. Like a flower that simply blooms, they simply are. The question why would be as meaningless to them as the question, what is the meaning of photosynthesis to us? I'm gonna turn off my notifications. All right. NHI might have no meaning built in. Perhaps their existence is so obviously meaningful that the question never arises. Like a character in a story who never doubts that they are part of the story, they live within meaning rather than seeking it. NHI might seek meaning in ways we cannot recognize. Their search might take form so different from ours that we would not identify it as a search for meaning. It might be expressed in mathematics, in art, in ritual, in ways of being that we cannot interpret. The question of whether NHI seek meaning is not just academic, it goes to the heart of what we share with them. If they too are seekers, then we are fellow travelers. If they are not, then we are alone in this particular aspect of existence, the only beings in the cosmos who must create their own reasons for being. On to the cosmic context of meaning. If NHI exists, then human meaning-making takes on a new context. We are not the only ones asking the big questions. We are not the only ones creating stories, building cultures, searching for purpose. We are part of a larger community of meaning makers, each contributing to a cosmic conversation that transcends any single species. This could be enormously enriching. The meanings we create could be supplemented, challenged, deepened by meanings created elsewhere. We could learn from other ways of being, other ways of understanding, other ways of finding purpose. the human search for meaning, which has sometimes felt like a solitary struggle, could become a collaborative project. But it could also be threatening. What if the meanings we have created are challenged by NHI meanings? What if our deepest values are revealed as parochial, our most cherished beliefs as provincial, our most profound insights as partial? The encounter with NHI could be the greatest challenge to human meaning since the Copernican revolution, a decentering of our sense of ourselves and our place in the cosmos. We didn't talk about that in another video. Now I'm getting like video ideas galore. These are probably just going to be like little lecture series. The trying mortal, it seems, may have to try in a new key, not just finding meaning for themselves, but finding meaning in relation to others whose meanings may be radically different. And now we are going to talk about the possibility of cosmic meaning. Perhaps the deepest question is whether the cosmos itself has meaning, a meaning that encompasses both us and any NHI that exists. Is the universe a meaningful place, or is meaning something we create in the face of cosmic indifference? If the universe has meaning, then our encounter with NHI would be part of that meaning. We would be discovering fellow characters in a cosmic story, fellow participants in a cosmic drama. The meaning of the whole would include both us and them, and our task would be to discover our respective roles. If the universe is indifferent, then meaning is something we must create together. The encounter with NHI would be an opportunity for collaborative meaning-making, the chance to create with others meanings that neither of us could create alone. The cosmos would provide the stage, we would provide the drama. Either way, the presence of NHI would transform the meaning question. It would no longer be, what does human life mean, but what does sentient existence mean? A question that can only be answered in dialogue with others. Next, part 5 is the question of mortality. Do NHI die?